Sometimes one chance meeting can split the heart in half so much that a person who is used to counting himself strong, rich and omnipotent, suddenly understands that there are things in life that are much more important than money, power and success. This is exactly what happened that evening when billionaire Georgiy took his 10-year-old son Maksim to a regular dinner. Is just a few hours to finally spend time together. After all, there is a constant business, a meeting, flights and meetings have long turned his life into an endless schedule. He thought that this evening would be quiet, calm and inconspicuous, just an attempt to be a father. But instead, he became the beginning of the most unexpected story of his life. A story that changed not only his heart, but also the fate of people who were at the next table. It all started with a simple, almost imperceptible scene. A woman with her head bowed. A child who held a glass of water too quietly, and a stack of change that they thought were trembling fingers. And a billionaire who, for the first time in many years, saw real poverty so close that it hurt under the ribs. If you believe in goodness, in the power of the human heart and in second chances, please like, write, comment, share this video and subscribe. It helps a lot to develop the channel and tell such stories to the world. Georgiy chose an inexpensive family eatery. Specially, I wanted to show my son at least once that ordinary people live outside his luxurious environment, that the world is not limited to a private driver, a private chef and a villa on the coast. Maksim grew up in prosperity, which became the norm for him. And Georgiy more and more often caught himself that the boy did not understand the value of simple things. So he decided that dinner at a small cafe was a good way to show his son something real. But he could not even imagine that the present would be so sick. When they arrived, the cafe was almost full. Noisy companies, the smell of French fries, mixed voices. We sat by the window, ordered burgers, milkshake and potatoes. Maksim looked at people with interest, as if he was discovering a new world. Georgiy watched his son with warmth, for the first time. Feeling like he's doing something really right. And suddenly his attention was attracted by the table opposite. A woman of about 30 sat opposite a little girl, the same one in the image at the beginning of the story, pale, with large, serious eyes, gripping a glass of water as tightly as if it were the only value in her life. In front of them on the table lay coins, a lot of change, laid out in neat piles. The woman quietly counted something with her lips, and the girl looked at the plates of food around, but did not ask, did not capricious. She just lowered her eyes and squeezed her fingers on the glass even tighter. It was the silence of poverty, the one in which there is no complaining, no screaming, only silence and an attempt to accept reality. Georgiy caught himself staring too long and looked away. But something shook inside. He remembered his childhood, distant, almost forgotten, when his mother also counted coins so that there was enough for bread. He took a deep breath, trying to drive away the memories, because he had long convinced himself that he had escaped poverty forever. But the past knows how to return in the most unexpected way. Maksim also noticed that family. He leaned over to his father and asked quietly, "Why don't they have food?" It was a difficult question that could not be answered in words without wounding his own soul. And then he tried to distract his son, saying that it is not worth looking at, that everyone is going through their own difficulties. But the boy did not look away. He looked at the girl for a long time and suddenly said barely audibly, "Dad, what if we didn't have? Did you have money?" These words hit Georgiy harder than any memories. He felt something crack inside him, the very place where the old pain of poverty that he had so long stored. He hid it from himself. He looked at his son. In his gaze there was sincere childish concern and surprise. Maksim grew up in luxury, but remained kind. And Georgiy realized that he had no right to let this quality fade away. The woman at the next table continued to count the coins. Her shoulders trembled. She ran her hand over her face every now and then, trying to hide her tears. The girl was silent, but it was clear that she was desperately hungry. And Georgiy felt his heart shrinking more and more. Finally, the woman quietly told the waitress that she would only take a glass of water and a bun, the cheapest thing on the menu. But when the waitress left, Georgiy noticed how the woman was trying to return some of the coins back to her wallet. Even on the she lacked a bun. He knew he could solve their problem in 1 second, with one bill, with one gesture. But he also knew how painful it can be to accept help when pride is even warmer than the stomach. He saw himself in this woman, and that is why he did not want to do everything abruptly. Meanwhile, Maksim fell silent. He looked at that girl as if he was worried about her, and then suddenly put some of his fries on the edge table and whispered to his father that he wanted to share. Georgiy felt tears come to his eyes for the first time in years, and he knew he had to do something. More than just paying their bill. He got up and walked over to the reception desk, asking him for help. At first, he wanted to do it covertly. Just pay for that family's dinner and leave. But in the process, he learned something from the staff that changed his plan completely. It turned out that the woman, a single mother, who had recently lost her job, that they lived in cheap rented housing, that the child is sick, and medicines are expensive, that they come here not to eat, but to sit in a warm room, when in the heating is turned off for debts. And this information hit Georgiy so hard that he was almost speechless. He felt a wave rising inside him, a mixture of compassion, pain, and determination. He remembered himself as a child, when his own mother did everything possible and impossible to feed him. He remembered how he dreamed that one day he would grow up and become strong enough to help others. And suddenly he realized that all he was is meaningless if he does not use his power for good. He returned to the table. Maksim looked at him inquiringly, and Georgiy realized that this moment was a chance to show his son what it means to be human. He already knew what he would do. He already saw the path he would take. But before he could do anything really serious, he wanted to take the first step, a natural human step. He called the waitress and said that he wanted to order dinner as a gift for that family. But not only dinner. A full menu, everything they wanted, and asked to do it so that the woman would not even think that it was a handout. He wanted it to look like a promotion of the establishment, like an occasional bonus, like a smile of fate, and not like charity. The staff readily agreed. They themselves had long looked at that family with pity, but could not help. A few minutes later, the waitress came to the woman's table and told the news. Special offer for guests. The woman did not believe it. The girl cowered in fright, but when the food was brought to them, the girl smiled for the first time in the evening. And Georgiy, watching this, felt something warm in him, as if a lamp had been lit inside him. He did not could look away, and at that moment he made a decision that would change everything. But he did not yet know that everything was only starts. When the woman and her little daughter ate quietly for the first time in the evening, Georgiy felt that just paying for dinner is too little. It was a gesture of kindness, but not a solution to their problem. And he could no longer just turn away and leave. Something in the woman's eyes struck a chord in him too deeply, and the girl's smile became the very light that finally melted the ice that had been gathering inside his successful but lonely life for years. He realized that he would do what he would have wanted to be done to him and his mother when they were on the verge of despair. When he and his son finished dinner, Georgiy did not approach the woman directly. He did not want to embarrass her in front of the child. Instead, he asked the administrator to give her a small note with only a few sentences. What's in? Hard times happen, but no one should have to go through them alone, which in the cafe will soon open. A new support program for families with children, that if she needs a job, she can leave contacts. He signed the note and indicated his phone number, but did not write his name. He didn't need thanks. He needed to make her believe that the light could return to her life. When he finished, he took his son by the hand, and they left the cafe. It was cool outside. Maksim was silent, looking thoughtfully at the glowing windows. And suddenly, when they were already getting into the car, he said, "Dad, I want to be like you. I want to help people." These words were the best reward for Georgiy for the whole evening. He realized that he had done much more than help strangers. He gave his son a lesson in humanity that will stay with him forever. The next day, Georgiy's phone vibrated quietly. He saw an unfamiliar number, and for the first time in a long time he felt a slight excitement. The woman left him a voice message. She spoke uncertainly, quietly, but there was so much sincerity in her voice that he stopped in the middle of the office, forgetting about negotiations that awaited him in 10 minutes. She said that she had never received such kindness in her life, that she did not knew how to explain to her daughter why they had no food, that yesterday for the first time in several months she saw the girl having a hearty dinner. And in the end, she said that she did not know who he was, but she agreed to any job just to earn honestly and return her daughter to a normal life. Georgiy listened to the message several times. He felt that this was not an accident, as if fate itself had given him a chance not just to do a good deed, but to completely change the fate of a person. He did not delay, he called her. The conversation was difficult. Her pride, fear, and gratitude were felt. But he was patient. He offered her a job in one of his projects, a modest position, not too high, but stable, with the possibility of growth, with support. At first, she refused, shy, afraid to seem like a beggar. But he gently explained that this was not almsgiving, this was the chance she deserved. And she agreed. A few days passed, and the woman, whose name was Olga, got a new job. She tried her best. She came before everyone else, left later. Confidence appeared in her eyes, and warmth in her smile. The staff immediately felt her sincerity and kindness, and many supported the newcomer, knowing that she had a difficult life situation. Georgiy followed her progress not as the owner of the company, but as a person who cares. He also learned about the disease of her daughter, a rare disease that requires regular tests and treatment. And then he was faced with a choice, to remain an observer or to intervene again. He remembered how once he himself needed help and how no one came. And then he decided that the little girl would not fight alone. He contacted doctors, organized medical support, paid for the examination all anonymously through a foundation that he had long financed. He wanted Olga to feel strong, not obligated. A month later, the changes were noticeable. The girl began to smile more often. Olga began to wear a more confident posture. Maksim continued to be interested in their fate, sometimes asking, "Dad, how is the girl? She is happy now." Georgiy answered that yes, and understood that happiness is when you can change at least one fate. But the most surprising part of the story happened later. One evening, Georgiy decided to go to the same cafe again, no longer for a lesson, or for memories. He wanted to see how the place where this story began had changed. He came there with his son, and when they entered, he saw a familiar face behind the counter. The woman smiled at the visitors. She worked here in the evenings, part-time, not because the salary was not enough, but because she wanted to return kindness to the world in the same way that the world once gave it to her. She glanced at Georgiy and Maksim. Their eyes met, and although she already knew who had arranged for her work and help, she didn't say a word, only smiled softly. It was gratitude that did not need to be expressed in words. Georgiy felt warmth in his chest. He realized that sometimes fate turns out so correctly, as if it was written by someone invisible. Meanwhile, Maksim noticed the girl who was now sitting by the window and drawing. She no longer held the glass of water with trembling hands. Now she looked like an ordinary happy child, busy with her children's world. And at that moment, Georgiy realized that their story was not about money and not about help. This story is about how one heart can wake up another. That evening, he left the cafe feeling that he had done what he had to do. But the most surprising thing happened later. After 2 months, Olga was promoted. Not because she was special, but because she was hardworking, honest, kind. She earned it. Herself and her daughter received a course of treatment, and the improvements were much better than the doctors expected. The little girl again began to run, laugh, draw the future that she had thanks to one chance meeting. When Georgiy told his son all the details, Maksim was silent for a long time, and then suddenly said, "Dad, when I grow up, I am too. I want to help people. You showed me how to do it." And Georgiy realized that he had found not only kindness, but also strength in himself. Pass it on. This story became part of their family, part of their lives. But it was also something of a greater reminder that there are too many people in the world who are embarrassed to ask for help but desperately need it. Sometimes one sludge, one person is enough to change everything. If this story touched your heart, please support the video with a like, comment and subscription. It helps us tell the world more good stories that inspire us to live for real. And just before the finale, a special request. Index finger directed to the right, white outer side of the palm, please write in the comments. Good returns. I will be very pleased to read your words.